So we'll be talking a little bit about your spiritual path as well as the contents of your book, which is very popular and being well received around the world, Your Soul's Plan. And I love the subtitle, Discovering the Real Meaning of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born.
To me, anybody who is in body is an extraordinarily courageous being. As I mentioned earlier in the interview, I had a past life in Nazi Germany in which I was a German citizen opposed to what the Nazis were doing, but I lacked the courage to speak out against it. And then I went to this woman and I said, I'm thinking of writing this book about how we plan our lives before we're born. May I interview your soul? And she said, sure. So we got together 5 times for a total of about 15 hours. She went into trance, she channeled her soul, and I asked her soul questions about pre-birth planning. And so, well, when I finally decided that I would, in fact, attempt to write a book about it, I got online and I went to every spirituality bulletin board I could find, and I posted a notice saying, author, writing a book about how we plan our lives before we're born. If you remember planning your lifetime, please contact me, because I thought there must be people somewhere in the world who have memories of planning their lives. And the book, Your Soul's Plan, is focused on the pre-birth planning of challenges as opposed to joyful experiences, because I think that's where people really are searching for meaning. You know, when something bad happens, you want to know, why did this happen? So I chose to research the pre-birth planning of physical illness, having disabled children, alcoholism, drug addiction, deafness, blindness, the death of a loved one, and severe accidents. So I would interview someone on one of those particular challenges, and then that person would have 1, 2, and sometimes 3 sessions with the mediums in which we would ask, Spirit, did this person plan this challenge before he or she was born, and if so, why?
It is a serious spiritual question pondered often by many on the path of self-inquiry. Are the thoughts, actions, and lessons of our lives born randomly, or are they given form by design? Author Rob Schwartz says, so often when something bad happens, it may appear to be meaningless suffering. But what if your most difficult experiences are actually rich with hidden purpose? Purpose that you yourself planned before you were born? Could it be that you chose your life's circumstances, relationships, and events? Welcome to SOULJOURNS. This interview was recorded in Cleveland, Ohio in July 2010.
Rob Schwartz, it's really a pleasure to have a chance to sit down and do a one-on-one interview with you. Our paths have crossed quite a few times, and I've missed not having the opportunity to just hear you expound upon some of the ideas that you've written about and that you've stated in your previous books, I guess now plural. And so we'll be talking a little bit about your spiritual path as well as the contents of your book, which is very popular and being well received around the world, Your Soul's Plan. And I love the subtitle, Discovering the Real Meaning of the Life You Planned Before You Were Born. And this book was previously published as Courageous Souls Do We Plan Our Life Challenges Before Birth, I should say. Isn't that an interesting slip of the tongue? Because maybe we do it before death as we think about reincarnating too, if you want to go that route. So let's just begin by not talking about the book, but what interested you in something that other than material science world, the world of the invisible and spirit that you started to pursue?
Well, I used to be very interested in the material world, or more so than I am now. My background is actually very conventional. I have an MBA. I was in the corporate sector for a number of years, doing primarily corporate marketing, communications, corporate writing of different kinds. And for me, the path to writing Your Soul's Plan started in Chicago in mid-2003. And at that time, I was doing this corporate writing and feeling very, very deeply unfulfilled by the work that I was doing. You know, at that time, I used to say to friends and family, I had the feeling that if I were to fall off the face of the earth, my clients wouldn't even know that I was gone.
After a day or a week or a month, or how about after an hour maybe?
Maybe even after an hour. I felt that I was doing good work and I was making a good income, but I didn't feel that what I was doing was unique or a unique expression of me in any way. It was something that many, many other people could do. But I also had the sense that there was a higher calling or a unique purpose to my life, but I didn't know what it was, and I wasn't sure how to figure out what it was. So I feel that I come from a fairly conventional background. You know, I grew up less than a mile from where we are sitting right now at your home in Pepper Pike, Ohio. I have what I regard as a conventional education based on the scientific method. My family might disagree with this, but I feel that I come from a fairly conventional family. So in mid-2003, when I was having what I think of as sort of an existential crisis in life, because of my conventional background, my first attempts to figure out my higher calling were conventional in nature. So the first thing I did was I went to a career counselor, and I took what you might know as the Myers-Briggs inventory, and I found out that I'm an INFJ personality type, and that didn't help me at all to figure out my calling in life.
Did you trust it? Did you believe it?
You know, it was remarkably accurate in terms of what it said about my personality and my preferences in life, but it didn't help me to figure out specifically how do I apply my unique talents in a unique way in the world, and that was really what I was looking for. So when that didn't help, I went to different family members and friends and I said, you know, I'm really not fulfilled by this corporate work that I'm doing. I feel that there's a unique purpose to my life, a higher calling, but I don't know what it is.
Did you express it like that to them? To
I
your
did.
Family members and
I did.
friends? Did they think you were crazy?
Some of them did, yeah. Some of them still do. But I put it that way. And I said, what do you think I should do with my life? And invariably, they would respond in one of two ways. Many people literally just shrugged their shoulders, threw up their arms, and said, I have no idea. The other half said that I should do whatever they were doing for a living. And so as you can imagine, this really did not help me at all. So when that didn't work, I began to think, all right, I need to think outside the box here. There's got to be some creative way for me to figure out my higher calling in life. What could it be? And this idea came to me, go talk with a psychic medium. Now again, I come from a very conventional background. Mediumship is not part of my upbringing. I didn't know anybody who had ever seen a medium. It was just not something I was familiar with.
How surprised were you when this idea came out of the blue? A very unconventional idea.
I didn't know where the idea was coming from, and I didn't really know what to make of it. Knowing what I know now, I have to believe that a spirit guide was whispering this idea in my ear. But at the time, I hadn't even heard the term spirit guide. I didn't know what that was.
Before we move on, because I
Yes.
have a hunch of where you're going, and I want to hear that in great detail, but I want to still set the foundation a little bit more clearly.
Okay.
Did you have an interest in metaphysics or religion prior to 2003?
I had
when
an
you
interest in
this?
spirituality.
Oh.
Not in religion, but in
Okay.
spirituality.
Far before 2003? Or
Before 2003, but it wasn't metaphysical in nature. To me, at that time, spirituality and metaphysics were different things, and I didn't really understand the connection between the two. So I was interested in spiritual growth, spiritual subjects, but I didn't think about them or approach them in a metaphysical way.
Did your conventional family give you a religion to be born into and through?
Yes, I was born in the Jewish faith.
Mhm.
I still identify as Jewish. If you ask me what religion I am, I'll tell you that I'm Jewish.
Mhm.
But to me, that's more of a cultural identification. It's not a theological identification.
Were you a practicing member of the Jewish faith?
In the sense that I went to services on the high holidays.
Do you remember yourself extricating yourself from that practice or just drifting away slowly?
More of a slow drifting away.
And you didn't probably think much of that. I'm just still trying to figure out where this heightened spiritual interest might have come from.
I believe now that I planned before I was born to have a spiritual awakening at a particular time in my life.
Which is the whole point of your book.
Which is the whole point of the book. I am not a numerologist, but the spiritual awakening occurred during my 40th year. And numerologically, I know the number 40 is highly significant. And I believe I planned for it to take place during that year.
So you're not a numerologist, but you put great importance on the numerology of your life.
I do.
So how do
Yeah.
you account for that if you're not a...
Because I've seen so many references to that number 40. It comes up again and again in the Bible. It comes up again and again in metaphysical or channeled literature. It just seems to be a tremendously important number.
So why wouldn't you lend more weight to numerology then?
I believe in numerology.
Okay.
I just don't know a great deal about it.
Okay, continue. This is all fascinating because I think it's always helpful to hear a little bit more about, before the conclusions are discussed in detail, what led up to them. So you had spirituality on the mind from the
It was on the mind for a number of years prior to 2003. But in 2003, it suddenly became the focus of my life. When I was trying ostensibly to figure out what to do with my life. Now, knowing what I've learned since then, I think that I was being redirected by Spirit toward my higher calling. But in my mind, it was essentially a career crisis.
I was going to ask you, was there a catalyst for this?
Yeah, it was basically a career crisis. What should I do to make a living that is more fulfilling and more unique than what I was doing with the corporate writing?
But it wasn't a super crisis like being fired from your career,
No,
or
not at all.
being divorced from your job or from a mate or something like that.
No, I felt very unfulfilled by what I was doing, and I felt it was almost as though a voice was saying to me, "You're here for a different purpose than this."
Why do you suppose, before we get to the answer, you chose that path to begin with?
That's a very good question. I think everything I did prior to 2003 was preparation for what then started in 2003. So it turns out that all the writing I did comes in very handy, but in a very different sort of way now. It turns out that all the marketing I did comes in very handy, but in a very different way now. Everything really prepared me for the writing of the book that I went on to write.
So this is all prelude to the big buffet of discovery in your
Yes.
life of something far greater than your studies, than your early spiritual interests or your career.
Right. But I didn't know any of that at that time.
One quick question, and that is it lesser a factor of numerology, perhaps, even though you indicated it's pretty much a substantial part of the equation here, or is it more a factor of your soul's plan to do this at the age of 40 in your physical life?
I don't know that you can separate those two, because as I understand it, numerology plays a role in the soul's pre-birth planning. I don't know specifically what the role is. I haven't researched that particular aspect of pre-birth planning. But I think those two, the soul planning and the numerology, are linked with each other. So I would say, in my belief system, my soul created a life plan that was very specific, year by year, and month by month, and week by week, and day by day in some cases, and even moment by moment sometimes. And I believe that my soul planned that spiritual awakening for my 40th year of existence on planet Earth.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, this is just really fascinating. So let's end the detour that I purposely took you away from with your story being told and go back to where you were when you started to contemplate psychics.
So the talk with the career counselor didn't produce anything. Talking with friends and family didn't really shed any light on the matter. Then this idea, see a psychic medium, came to me. And I thought, well, why not? You know, it takes an hour, a little bit of money. If nothing comes out of it, there's no harm done. So I did some research on the internet. I selected a medium whose credentials seemed good to me. And on May 7th of 2003, we had this session, the first session I ever had with a medium. Now, I remember the day because that was really the day on which my life changed. So in this session, she introduced me to the concept of spirit guides, which I had never heard of. And she explained a spirit guide is a highly evolved non-physical being with whom each one of us plans our lives before birth and who then guide us through our lives after we get here.
Non-physical meaning they've never had physical form?
Not necessarily. As I understand it, some guides have never incarnated, but many, many have. And in fact, some guides, we can talk more about this later, may actually be members of our own soul group. So there might be people we share incarnations with, but who are not in body at the time that we're in body.
One guide, one person?
I think everyone has at least one guide. Some people, as I understand it, have more than one. My understanding is that if the more your work influences other people, the more guides you may have, because you have a greater responsibility to influence those people in a way of integrity.
Some people of various faiths might call this your guardian angel. Is this something other than a guardian angel?
Some people believe that there is no difference. My own belief is that a guardian angel is a different kind of being serving exactly the purpose that is implied in the name, to guard you against mishap on the physical plane. So in other words, you as a soul decide you're going to come to Earth for a certain period of time to do certain things, and you want to remain alive so that you can do those things. So the guardian angel will, if need be, save you from physical mishap to keep you in body so that you can do what you came here to do.
And guarding and guiding are distinctly different chores.
I think so.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's talk about the guiding spirit.
Okay. So in the session with the medium, not only did she explain to me what a guide was, but she channeled my guides. And they said to me something I had never heard before, which was, you planned your life before you were born. And I said, well, did I plan all aspects of it? And they said, yes. And then I said, well, if that's true, why would I have planned the difficult, the challenging things, the unpleasant things that happen?